Hi, how is everybody?
Cold.
It's a bit chilly, isn't it? It's a bit cold. We had snow in Devon on Saturday. That's how cold it is. We don't often get snow in Devon.
No, we don't, do we? Although I don't know that we
No.
could call mine snow. It was just ice that just freaked me out when I was driving around in it. It's not good for me. Hope you're all well this morning. It's Monday. We've got a couple of weeks. We were just saying, I wonder how many we'll get turning up today because it's Monday and everyone's Christmas brains are probably well and truly on. You've probably had a Christmas do or two by now, and you're definitely on the wind down or
Yeah.
the race to get things finished. But
That's what
I
it
hope
is,
you're all
isn't it?
good.
Yeah, like lots of stuff needing to be done in like half the time now, isn't it? Because everybody's off from Christmas week.
I know. I still find it so funny that you think that the world, like the whole of time ends on Christmas Day, and it's like, no, it's only a week. It all starts again in January. Oh, funny. Anyway,
Okay. Shall we get going? Because I'm
yeah,
aware it's
definitely.
2 minutes past 9:30. So welcome everybody to Inclusive Management. This is the fifth and final session in our series of building a modern management toolkit. So welcome and thank you. We are recording the session today. So as per usual, we'll pop the recording onto the YouTube channel and send it out to everybody as well. This session this morning is running for about 45 minutes again, so we'll be finished about 10:15, just in time for you to get on with your day. Thanks again for joining, and again, for those who don't know me, Erica Farmer. So I've got 20 years corporate L&D experience in some of the UK's largest brands. I'm now the co-founder and business director of Quantum Rise Talent Group. And some of the roles that I've held in the past are various heads of talent, heads of L&D, heads of apprenticeships. And I work with my business partner, Hayley, and our L&D manager, Emma, and I'll pass you over to Hayley now.
Brilliant. Thanks, Erica. We've probably got a lot of repeating names, haven't we? So the introductions are kind of become a bit of a waste of time by the fifth session. But yeah, as it says, Hayley Bird. So I'm Erica's business partner, co-founder and delivery director at Quantum Rise. So that's a little bit about me, with a number of years experience in training skills, learning and development in one way or another, and very quickly bought into online learning about 7 years ago. So I've been honing that craft and enjoying it and trying to make it really, really valuable since then. So I'm going to pass you back to Erica, who's going to take you through the first part of the session, a really interesting one today. So we'll definitely want you to be challenging your thinking and our own biases around inclusivity and what that actually really means. So Erica, over to you.
Thank you so much. So inclusive management and leadership, it's one of those terms that you hear bandied around quite a lot, but it's quite difficult to put your finger on what we mean by that. So in the chat, I want you to tell me how inclusive management and leadership is going to support you in your role. It could be elements of inclusive management and leadership. It could be something that you're working on in terms of a cultural change or a project or some training. Just give us a view really on how today's topic is going to support you in your role. We'll just give you a second or two to go ahead. I've still got people enrolling for the session, so I'm just going to send out. Yeah, my mailbox it's gone a bit crazy this morning, so let me just get sure everybody's got the link to get into the session.
Fine, I can pick up some of the comments as they come through. How is it relevant for you? And I think this is something that we all need to actually stop and think about, how inclusivity is really relevant for us, because it almost sometimes happens without us ever consciously thinking about it or stopping to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got the blue box, by the way, popping up in the right hand corner, just go into the back of your Teams app and change your inner meeting to do not disturb. I'm just doing that now because I forgot to do it for the session, and that will stop the blue blobs coming up on the chat. Okay, what have we got coming up then? Culture change within the organisation, employers and apprentices from Judith. Absolutely. And this is one of those topics becoming even more important in that space. Emma says it will help me when writing and developing training. Lorraine says creating an environment of welcoming and requesting different views, not just one way to do things, challenge the status quo. Love that. Ben says, at the start of the ED&I journey, hoping this will help to, and the steering group to shape what inclusion and inclusive management looks like. Absolutely. Hopefully we'll give you a couple of things for you to take away, Ben, and talk about in your steering group. Karina, hello Karina. Karina's back again. Brilliant. Changing culture and supporting me to ensure team members are developed. Pete says, I look after the development of lots of managers. Intention is that they can enable their teams. Oh, I love that phrase, to bring their whole selves to work. So true. It's about authenticity, this, isn't it? Liz says, ensure my learners in different groups and different organisations who feel included in remote sessions. Yeah, that's a nice spin to put on it, actually. Different ways of thinking about. So why is this so important? Well, Corn Ferry, and if you don't follow Corn Ferry on LinkedIn, it's definitely worth kind of seeing a lot of the research and development they do. They show that inclusive teams make better decisions. And the reason why they say that is having everybody's opinion around the table is going to be more robust, and you're going to get more of an inclusive, robust decision 87% of the time. That's an interesting figure. I would argue it's probably more than that. It's what makes diversity work and bring teams together. To be able to do this, managers and leaders need to be able to empower team members to take risks, manage their own development, and be authentic at work. And that A word, authenticity, authentic, I think is going to come up quite a lot in today's session. So specifically from a manager perspective, I want you to give me in the chat quite a specific definition. What would you say inclusive management is? What does an inclusive manager do? If you had to write one line, so don't give me War and Peace, what is inclusive management? Give us your thoughts in the chat. And you could look at this as what do I need to do as an inclusive manager, or a manager who's trying to build that culture of inclusivity? What is the impact of inclusive management? If we get it right, we'll be looking at that a bit later as well. Christine says everybody's included and respected. That's nice and simple. I really like that. Sunny says embracing people's differences for sure. And this isn't just about protective characteristics, although that's important. This is so much wider than that. Pete says flexibly managing people based on their needs. Love that. So need-based, output-based, for example. Karina says it's something like everybody is listened to. I love that as well. Nice and simple. Judith says makes everyone feel they have a proper voice and is heard and reacted to. Brilliant. Good stuff. Okay, absolutely. So we're going to have a look at the definition from the Employers Network for Equality and Inclusion. Leaders who are aware of their own biases and preferences, and it's okay, we've all got our biases and preferences, by the way, and that's okay. This is about awareness. Actively seek out and consider different views and perspective to inform better decision making. They see diverse talent as a source of competitive advantage. And competitive advantage and competitive edge is something we're going to be talking about a little bit more later in this session. And inspire people to drive organisational and individual performance toward a shared vision. And like I said, it's important to recognise that we all have conscious or unconscious biases. We all have been brought up to have opinions and views and morals and thoughts about certain things in a certain way. It's just that sometimes the conversation doesn't allow us to express that, or doesn't allow us to learn from that. And it's the learning and the awareness piece that's really, really important here. Getting that feedback on perhaps behavior or language or actions that either supporting that culture of inclusion and diversity, or not supporting that culture of inclusion and diversity. And being intent, having the intent and the planning to make things better and make things how you want them to be, and enable people to bring their best self to work. So we've got a little bit of a snip of a TED talk for you now. This is from Janet Stovall, and Janet talks about a business approach to diversity and inclusion. And I really like the way she talks about things like numbers and the difference between numbers and culture. We're not going to play you the whole TED talk, but it's definitely worth going back. It's on the TED.com website. We're just going to play you about 3 minutes or so now. The volume will come through your machine or your headset, and Hayley will press play in just a second. Talks about that in a real business context, and yes, she talks about it in the framework of people of colour and diversity, but you could argue that that message goes across everything that we're talking about. visible, non-visible, protected characteristics, and so much more that make us different. Neurodiversity, it could align to any of it. And the key point that we pulled out of this video when we saw it for the first time is organizations mandate diversity, but you have to cultivate inclusion. So she has her numbers and the 30% of where you start hearing that voice from that group of people, no matter who they might be. But actually, as a leader and a manager, you have to work really hard to cultivate that culture. The culture just doesn't happen. It's around your behaviors, your actions, your vulnerability, your honesty, and where you are as a manager and the actions that you bring about to be able to make this happen. So let's think about this practically. You guys as managers and L&D practitioners working with managers in your organization, we're going to do an annotation activity right now. If this doesn't work, just feel free to give us your thoughts in the chat. But I want you to think about, how do we practically cultivate inclusivity in your organizations in the workplace? What kind of things do you expect from yourself as a leader or manager, or the leaders and managers that you're working with, to be able to practically cultivate inclusivity? You might want to have a little bit of a think about this, because it's kind of pushing the grey matter on a Monday morning. But what are those practical things that you would be expecting to be happening in your organisation from either your senior leadership team, your peers, or you yourself as a manager or a leader in this space? What would they be? Have a think about it and give us your thoughts on the chat, on the annotation. And again, if the chat isn't working, feel free to do that. And this is more just about your policies and procedures. This is more than just reading some e-learning around diversity and ticking a box to say that you've completed it. We actually want, what are those actual real actions that you're expecting from yourselves, your managers, your leaders, your exec, your SLT, your peer group, whoever that might be. Okay, here we go. Listening groups. Yeah, talking to people to understand, what does this mean? Is there any themes in the organization? What are the unconscious bias, or what are the words that are coming out that you're hearing that might be supporting or not supporting where you want to go with this? Widespread of people on focus groups, yeah, and projects. So again, the right sample of people to be able to give you the important kind of 100% view to recognize what the organization and the workforce are looking for. And the example I'll give you here is, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, there was a piece on the BBC News about a menopause group which the government had put together. So there was lots of ministers, there was representation from business and industry, and this committee was 100% male. So there was no women on the government's menopause committee. Now, arguably, some of those men would have had experience with the menopause by their wife, their partner, a female family member going through the menopause and experiencing that secondhand. But they were criticised, and I think rightly so, if you can't have a woman's point of view of something, like just in general on a group, but let alone something like lived experience of a menopause, how are you going to understand how that affects 50% of the population? So that's why this representation in this space is so important. Justin says, ask specific questions and listen to the responses. It's okay to ask people if they feel if we have an inclusive workplace or not. Make this question normal and a regular question to ask. I love that. Encourage, challenge, just part of the conversation, right? Yeah, absolutely. What else have we got? Familiarity of allyship in the workplace. Love that. People coming to me to ask if they can cater for different needs. Yeah, we shouldn't feel like we can't go and ask if we need something specific. I think that's really important. That's a great point. Managers asking lots of questions, having an open mind, positive conflict, really important, challenging ideas and behaviours. If you're seeing some kind of behaviour from managers and leaders that doesn't align to what you expect in this space, then you challenge it and you educate and you raise awareness. That's super important. And the culture of collecting thoughts from everybody, for sure. And Sunny says, introduce colleague networks, flexible working, create safe space to speak up, and culture. Really, really important, because you can't assume that everybody has the same understanding around a topic like this that you might have, for example, because your lived experience is very different to anybody else's. Some really good points coming up there. We'll just give it another couple of seconds. to align there. Liz says, invite all to the Christmas party, but make sure you ask them to start. I love that metaphor. Yeah. You know, and the other one that I see quite a lot is, you know, you've got the 3 boxes and you've got everybody has the same box, but the shortest person still can't see over the fence, but the tallest person can. That's not inclusion, for example. Sometimes the shortest person needs a bigger box to be able to see over the fence. You know, so that's why equity, inclusion, diversity all have slightly different terms. And we're not going to dive into that today. But if you're curious around understanding more about this stuff, go and do some reading and some research and listen to Janet Stovall's TED Talk and more TED Talks in this area, because it's actually really educational and it's really interesting. Okay, so thank you so much for all of your practical elements there. What we're going to move on to is a bit of a self-reflective exercise as managers and leaders as well. So what I'd like you to do is just on a piece of paper in front of you, or a workbook or your phone or whatever it is that you're doing, I want you to score yourself on these kind of core traits. And this information, I was reading in a paper on LinkedIn over the weekend. These are kind of the 5 main traits that recognizing a great inclusive manager or a great inclusive leader demonstrates. So emotional resilience, to understand the face of adversity around difficulties, differences, being able to challenge when you're seeing things that you don't feel right, and speaking up on behalf of people that can't speak on behalf of themselves for whatever reason. So being emotionally resilient to be able to do that. Self-assurance, in confidence, optimism, having that positive outlook on things. Flexibility, tolerate things like ambiguity and be adaptive to people's needs. If you're not serving your whole workforce or your community, what can you do to change that? Inquisitiveness, so you have that open mind, that curiosity to understand more and the impact of things. And authenticity yourself, you know, role modeling as an authentic individual, what that looks and feels like, so other people can look at you and say, actually I can do that too, and it's okay to do that. So I want you to score that. Was 0 being, you know, I'm not very good at this, or I think I need to work on this, and 5 being, I think I'm really strong in this area. And I just want you to self-score, and I want you to think about this: is what could I do more of? What could I take into my workplace as a leader or a manager to be able to demonstrate this more to the workplace? Because don't forget, people are looking at you all the time. Whether you're in L&D, HR, you're a manager, you're a leader, there's people looking to you to role model great stuff here. Now, once you've scored, feel free to put your score in the chat. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I want you just to have a little think about, okay, so if I'm a 3 out of 5 on flexibility, I know I'm not the most flexible person in the world, and I could do with putting other people's needs before my own sometimes when I understand there's a diversity need. What can I do to go and increase that score? What can I do to become more flexible in this space? But if you're not very curious, if you don't go and kind of learn more about different people and different cultures and different ways of doing things and different ways of working, and why does Jessica over there speak differently to how I speak, and why does, you know, whatever it might be, go and understand, go and be curious. Obviously, we learned from the royal family last week, don't go and ask where people are really, really, really from, because that was a bit of a clanger, right? You know, bless their cotton socks. But, you know, put your hands up. If you want to understand, be genuinely curious and understand people's lived experience, because generally people will be happy to talk about it if you ask sensitively in the right way. Brownie says, I think I've scored myself quite generously. That's great, Brownie. Just think about how can you support others in that space then, and what else are you seeing those behaviors from the SLT or the exec or the board, or kind of maybe younger people coming through, you know, whatever that might be. I've been watching early episodes of The Crown and it's shocking. Judith says, self-assurance is my weakness. I get anxious when things might not go well. Yeah, almost that kind of other side of things, worrying too much about other people's experience or what other people need. Don't forget, you can ask lots of questions around that. Again, it's around intention and it's around planning. You have to be, you know, clear in your intentions. If you want to make things better, this isn't just about stumbling upon creating a diverse culture or an inclusive culture. Curiosity is a good one, I think, in that space. Again, don't feel like you have to put your score in the chat. You can if you want to. Something for you to take away and just think about, right, for this week, it's Monday morning. What can I do out of these scores? What's the one action I can take away to role model to the workforce, to learn a bit more, to understand my own unconscious biases, whatever that might be? Stuff. Just got a few more coming into the chat. No, okay. Pete says, as a champion, I fear myself sounding like a broken record when things are obvious to others. Yeah, that's where that assumption comes in, that everybody's in the same place as you with stuff like this. And then, I don't know about you, but sometimes I get quite surprised when you see some kind of behavior. Part of the reason I left my last employed role, because I was observing a very toxic masculine board, and I didn't like what I was hearing coming out of those exec members, very white, very male, very stale, very kind of all saying that very ex-retail, and some of the things I was hearing wasn't aligned to how I felt about things and my values. They're obviously quite extreme to leave a role because of that, but it's also about educating and challenging in the right way. Okay, I'm going to hand you over to Hayley now. We've got 20 minutes left of the session. So we're going to be really clear around benefits and practicalities and what does that mean and how we can support others.
Brilliant, thanks, Erica. And some great thoughts coming in there. It really gets you thinking, doesn't it? Because I know as we've written various training content around inclusive management and leadership, we've gone out and found lots of research and articles, obviously, around this. And actually, when you start to educate yourself, even when you don't believe you have any of those kind of unconscious biases or there's nothing coming through around that, you really start to challenge yourself by educating yourself. So I'm going to share with you in this next part of the session some more research I've found around what inclusion looks like, in terms of lived experiences as well as protected characteristics, and what some of the impact of that can actually be organizationally and individually, but we're going to focus in on the organizational impact as well. So I'm going to launch a poll for you now, and very quickly I want you to just let me know, what are the benefits if we get this right? And we've touched on this a little bit, but I'm just going to press launch on that one, so it should just come up on your screen, and just submit your responses. And if you agree with things other people have written, you can just hover over and like them. You don't have to retype them, and it makes the words bigger, which sort of reinforces some of your thinking. But what are the real benefits if we get this right? And again, challenge yourself to think of 1 or 2 word answers as opposed to long sentences. The competitive edge, the environment, healthy environment, happiness. Absolutely. There's loads of stuff already coming in. Keep these coming, because what you'll find now is we start to get a real mix of organizational benefits, people benefits, employee benefits, and it bleeds right out into society and wider organizations and influence as well. Innovation, attracting more diversity, a better culture, absolutely. Productivity, talented workforce, the personal life. So you're really seeing, and again, hover over and like the things that really resonate with you. It'll make those words come out even bigger. But what you can see here is that holistic impact. It's not just one thing or 2 things that benefit here. It taps into so many different areas, including the wider sustainability and sustainability of yourself and your organizations as well. So there's so much benefit to getting this right, but it still becomes, and let's be honest, it still becomes a tick box exercise or part of your recruitment process, or it just sits there as a policy on a shelf. And inclusion needs to be something that we live and breathe every single day. It needs to be something that we actually don't even consciously think about anymore because we're just doing it. There's so much great stuff in there. Now, if that's still in the middle of your screen, you can close the box down. You won't lose the word cloud because it will still keep going in the background. And if you've got more thoughts and ideas, do answer those in the chat or the polls tab on your Teams app. So brilliant stuff. So you have come up with so much more, but these are some of the things that we've just pulled together in terms of some of those higher level benefits around actually people feeling satisfied at work, satisfied with their jobs, lower turnover, higher productivity, higher employee morale. The creativity and innovation here is a big piece. We're going to explore in a minute the correlation and the links between diversity and a diverse workforce and creativity and innovation, and it's huge. And there's so much research out there, and Janet Stovall started to touch on this in her TED talk, and we're going to build that out a little bit now as well. So how can diversity drive innovation? How does it drive innovation? So as we've done some digging and we've done some research around this, we found some fantastic research that was written in the Harvard Business Review, and the names obviously are on the screen as well, so you can capture that to go and look at the article in more detail. But there was so much in it that I really struggled with. Wow, because we've got 45 minutes today. I haven't got you all day or for hours, but there were some really key points that resonated that I wanted to bring to life in the session today. Now, first of all, there's two different types of diversity: inherent and acquired. So inherent diversity is where we tend to go oh, thanks, Erica. It's where we go by default. It's that protected characteristics, your sexual orientation, race. You've got all those things that when people say diverse, that's where we go. That's what we think about. Absolutely right, because that brings so much diversity in an organization and different thought and insight. But we've also got this second part of diversity that makes up diversity: acquired. What do you think acquired diversity is? Let me know in the chat. What is acquired diversity? What does it mean to look at diversity in this way? Who are these people? Who are these people around the table? What can we sometimes lack and forget about when we think about that term? Acquired diversity. What does it mean? I got lots of people typing away there. Wait for some of those to come through. Erica's put the link there into the article as well. Social standing, Pete, potentially, yes. What else? What else matters when it comes to thinking outside of your own thought, your own mindset, when it comes to inclusion and bringing everybody into the decision making, everyone into the problem solving? Language skills, potentially learning by experience, Christine. Experience, learning from others. So actually, and Erica alluded to this in the menopause example, it is important to have a mix of people around that table who have experience from lots of different ways. So this is about, and this research is based on having a balance of inherent diversity and acquired diversity. Absolutely, being open to understanding people, different experiences, different opinions. So the research explored organisations. It was 1,800 professionals, I think, 40 case studies, loads of faces. It's a credible piece of research. And what it found that was by looking at both of these kinds of diversity and having diverse workforces of sat around that table, organisations are 45% likelier to report market share growth. So that's huge. But what's even bigger is this link and correlation to innovation. 70% likelier, and like Erica said earlier, I challenge this as probably higher. Obviously, the research is only limited to the information that you get, but 70% likelier to report that the firm captured something new, a new market, a new innovation, 70% by having diverse people around that table and different thoughts, different opinions. So what we're going to look at now is what we can do to promote this within our organisation. So we've talked about the benefits, we've talked about some of those behaviours and what we can do practically to cultivate it within our teams. But what can we do now to really promote inclusion within our organizations? What can you do to promote inclusion as an individual where you are? And this could be something within your organization. It might be something in your personal life. It might be something in your team. Where does your influence stand? What's within your control, within your influence that you can do to promote inclusion? Yeah, Caroline. So consciously going out and actually asking for others' opinions. And I was just going to ask on the back of that, what stops us doing that? But then Christine's put in there, be brave. And sometimes there can be this level of fear maybe that stops us going out and asking for other opinions. What are we fearful of when we reach out for diverse opinions? And I'm talking about going to that person that you know isn't going to agree with you. That person that you know, as soon as you go to them for an opinion, they're going to block something. Something's going to happen, and you're not going to be able to take that idea forward anymore because you've asked that person. What stops us going to the person whose opinion is completely different to ours or insight is different? Because it sounds nice, doesn't it? Let's get everyone around a table and, but when we've got business challenges and we want to move things forward, what stops us? And I want you to think about that as well. So share my journey and ask others to do the same, Judith. I love that as well. What can you do? Ask people, other people, what they can do. Invite people to get involved, Caroline. Bring people in and be open-minded, Sunny. And that's something that we have to consciously challenge ourselves to do. Don't just get the opinions, thoughts, or ideas, but ask multiple people. Seek to understand. I love that, Emma. We love that. We love that term. Absolutely right. Brilliant stuff. Widespread focus groups, role model in learning interventions. Brilliant stuff. I'm not gonna read all of it out, Justin, but Justin's put some great insight in here as well, around quitting smoking and a good example in there, I think. So have a read of that, and definitely you can like and respond to that as well. Time restrictions stop us, Christine. They do, because we've got a goal. We've got something that we need to achieve. We need to get to the end of this. And actually, if we go to all the people that agree with us, it moves it through quicker. It's nice to work with the people that are on our page. So going out and seeking diversity and the reality of day-to-day pressures and what's going on at work can be a real challenge. Make yourself open to feedback, Emma. Be prepared that it might not be what you expect to hear. So actually going out and hearing what you might not want to hear all the time is really important. Make sure it's included in early onboarding events, Bryony. Absolutely. Set the tone early. This is something that this is our culture, this is what we're about, and this is what we want to encourage. Absolutely brilliant stuff coming in there as well. So just as we come to sort of close like we do, you're probably all getting into the swing of these sessions now. As we come to pull this together, we've started to summarize some thoughts around this, some action, I suppose, and awareness that you can take away with you today. I love that, Bryony. I just want to pick up on this one. By the time you've actually taken an idea out there, you've often already put a lot of work into it. So there's quite a lot then to go out and ask someone else for their opinion, because it might mean you need to go backwards, and that's quite a big thing to face. Absolutely. So get in there from the beginning. To your point, let's just get in there from the start and make sure we've got that real diversity of thought and opinion. So visible commitment. So be visibly committed, be authentic, and show and share your commitment to diversity. Challenge the status quo and just make this a personal priority, something that we're going to be so much more consciously aware and focusing on, and that we're going to talk about and tell. And Pete, you said, I feel like I talk about this and it often takes me by surprise that not everybody's on the same page. And Erica, you said the same. So keep being visible with that commitment and challenging and calling out behaviors where maybe it's not happening or not being seen. A leader or manager that shows humility, they're modest about capabilities, they admit mistakes. And the biggest thing that I think we do in this space as good inclusive managers or leaders is create space for other people to share ideas. Go out and ask teams for their opinions before assuming that ours is always right. Now, this is what this session has been all for today, I think. And even writing it, brings me to this space of our own awareness. We've all got bias. We all hold on to unconscious or conscious biases, but be aware of them. Show awareness of our blind spots. Ask people about the language we're using when we're addressing these topics and talking about things. Do I have any blind spots? Is there anything that I'm not aware of that I'm saying or that you're hearing? And work hard to become really aware of that. Be curious. We've talked about this a lot already today, but be curious about other people. If you're curious and you ask questions and you go out and listen to others without judgment, then we're more likely to understand them, and they're more likely to feel listened to, whoever that might be within our organisation. Get curious and seek to understand, as you say, Emma. Cultural intelligence. So being attentive to others' cultures, adapting as we need to, but ultimately, this is about education. It's about understanding through education, whether that's asking questions, whether it's looking into various research, wherever it might be, but it's actually gaining some intelligence around different cultures and the impact as well that different cultures have on how we might tackle a problem or how we might innovate or create something new. And it all comes down to the idea of effective collaboration, bringing everybody together, paying attention to it, creating that. In fact, it starts to pull together, for those of you that have followed us on this journey of this management toolkit, starts to pull all of this into one place, creating a psychologically safe environment, coaching people, supporting people to be their authentic selves. All of that comes into this idea that we want to create an environment where there's really effective collaboration. And then obviously providing training, support people. If there's problematic behavior, give people the skills to deal with it, call it out, don't ignore it or bury your head in the sand. Give people the skills that they need to be able to deal with problematic behaviors that are maybe driving a lack of inclusion in the workplace. And it will absolutely be out there. And I'm sure you've all hopefully you've all sat there and challenged things you've seen or heard, even subtle things in the workplace. Provide people with the skills they need to be able to tackle that stuff.
I think that point's really key as well, because if I go back to my example I shared earlier of part of the reason why I left my last employed role is I had the conversation with my line manager who went, yeah, I know it happens, but what can you do? And then she spoke to her line manager and said, Erica's raised this and she's not particularly happy. Yeah, I know it happens, but what can you do? You know, there was that kind of acceptance up the chain. And I was like, I could spend a lot of time and effort, and I'll challenge what's within my control. And within L&D and leaders, actually, we have a wider piece we can influence here. But understand what that means to you, have those relevant conversations and challenge. But in a political environment, just be aware of what that means as well. And we're not asking you to change the world, but we're asking you to work and collaborate with other people to make this more of a movement.
Brilliant stuff. Good. Okay, so it's 10 past 10. Once again, it flies by. I love that gift, Bryony. What can you do?
That's kind of what the response was.
Yeah, absolutely. That it couldn't look more slopey shouldered if you try, could it? Okay, so what's been your biggest learn today? What's your takeaway? And we'll be closing the session really, really soon to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. But first, before we go, what's been your biggest learn? What's your takeaway? What one thing can you take? We did some nice scoring exercises. We've challenged our thinking. We've understood the impact. What's been your biggest takeaway? Be braver, Judith. I love that. Yeah, absolutely, Caroline. The word cloud is in that polls tab at the top of your screen that you can click on. It's also further up in the chat as well for you. You have to scroll up a bit now, though. We've had quite a lot going on in there. But I need to find out more, Christine. So that education piece, definitely. The self-analysis tool used beyond just this topic, Justin. Yep, so absolutely. You've got other ways you can use that. I think stopping and reflecting on some of the core traits is really useful as well. Need to cultivate inclusion, Karina. Absolutely. Good. And do go away. Obviously, we've shared just really high level with you today with the time we've got, but go away and have a look at the Harvard Business Review. Go away and look at Janet Stubbles' TED Talk. It's really inspiring. She's a great speaker. So there's some other places you can go, hopefully, after the session today to build this even further. Yeah, Pete, it's a great one. She's just really a really inspiring speaker as well. Okay, great. So that brings us almost to the end of it. Keep those coming, by the way, if you're still typing. We still want to see them coming in. But we've been on this journey now. It's been about 6 weeks, I think, with various modules. And I know not all of you have come to all of them, but we've definitely seen returning faces, which has always been nice. So this is the last module of our 5-part series of building a modern management toolkit. And we hope that you found it a useful use of your time. And I can't believe it's less than 2 weeks till Christmas, but here we are. So we hope you all have a really wonderful time. Erica's also popped a link in there to her link tree, so you can follow us on LinkedIn, you can access our website. We've got loads of further resources and thought pieces on our website as well, and you can obviously contact us directly or arrange a call if you wanted to see how some of this stuff can support you in your organizations ultimately. Hopefully you've got a good feel for our style and our content and how we deliver these events as well. So if you wanted to book any time in, you can do that as we come to the end of the year, or even, believe it or not, there is a world in January that we can book into as well, so we can always go there. So yeah, if there's anything else you need, we are here. You've been a pleasure, and thank you so much for all your thought and insight, and have a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Thank you.